Hi, myself Vaishnavi, Assistant Professor in the Department of Information Technology from SNS College of Engineering. Now let us see about the DDL languages. So data definition language. DDL stands for data definition language. So some data into the table should exist first. We will be able to insert, update or delete, even select and see what is there in the table. So before we proceed with that data aspects that should exist with the schema of the table, and DDL mainly deals with the table schema. So DDL stands for data definition language, that is, this deals with the creation of the table, the alteration in the table, the renaming of the table, dropping a table or even truncating a table. What do we mean by this? Say if we want to create a logical structure, the table structure, then creation, we need to create a table. Let's assume we have created a table and we want to modify the scheme of the table after creation. We might be adding a new column or dropping a column or even changing a data type of the existing column. So that is possible using DDL. So creation of the table also, alteration of the table, then if you want to rename the table, rename again, this is renaming the schema only. So this is also DDL, and dropping the table means just removing the complete information about the table. Even the table itself will be dropped from the memory. So the complete removal of the table structure is dropping. Dropping a table means deleting all the data present in the table, including the structure, the scheme of a table. And truncation means it's going to delete all the data present in the table, but the schema remains, the structure remains. Drop deletes everything, whereas truncate deletes only all the data present in the table, but the table structure exists, the schema will persist, but it will remove all the data present in the table. So again, this is also called data definition language. So why do we need separate language? The first language DDL deals with the schema, and the second language DML is going to deal with data part. So the additional information is in the DDL actually. So specify the database schema by a set of definition. So DDL is used to specify a data. Set of definition, it can create a table or alter or rename or truncate or drop the table or database of a schema by a set of definitions. And that is why we call this as a language, as a definition language, DDL. And while creating the database schema, we may include some consistency constraints. What we mean by consistency constraints, let's take it is a bank database and there is a column in the account table where the balance column should not be lesser than or equal to 0. In that case, we are enforcing a constraint to the schema that whenever we try to insert and row the data into the table with the column account balance is equal to 0 or lesser than 0, the database should not accept that, because we have enforced a condition or a constraint to the table that balance column should not be lesser than or equal to 0. And this is one of the constraints, and likewise we enforce a lot of consistency constraints so that we can make the database a powerful and a consistent one. So this consistency constraints can be enforced on the database in two ways. One is with domain constraints and the other one is with referential integrity. Let's focus on domains constraint. Let's take a table. In a table we'll obviously having some columns. Each column is specified by a data type. This itself is a constraint to some extent. Let's take an example, employee table. The first column is ID, means employee ID, and employee ID is all of numbers. In that case, we are specifying the data type to the employee ID column as numbers. That after specifying the employee ID column as number type, the number data, thereafter whenever we try to insert some records into the table, if the employee ID column is only of numbers only, then that insertion or updation will be accepted. Otherwise, if you try to insert some data type or character type into the employee ID column which is set as number type, it will not accept, and this is one of the constraints that comes under domain constraint. So, and also we are enforcing some conditions to the columns like account balance should not be lesser than or equal to 0. This is also coming under domain constraints. And what about the referential integrity is that, suppose we are inserting a value into the table and that value should exist in other table, we are referring the value which is inserted in one table and we are specifying a condition that value whatever we are going to insert into the table, that value should exist in another table. Here we are referring another table only. When this condition is satisfied, this operation will be accepted. So this kind of constraint is called as a referential integrity. And then assertion and authorization. If you use it having read authorization, here read the data present in the table but not write it. The user has insert authorization, he able to insert records into the database. He has update authorization. So update the database. Suppose if your user wants to delete some data present in the data table, he should have delete authorization. So we may assign or none or even any combination of these type of authorizations like read, insert, update or delete authorizations. And last point here is data dictionary and metadata. What we mean by data dictionary? Generally, whatever the DDL commands we execute, all DDL commands is going to generate an output, and the output of all the DDL command is placed in a special table called data dictionary. Remember this, data dictionary is a special type of table, and what this data dictionary table is going to contain, it's going to contain metadata. It means data about data. So data dictionary is a special type of table that can be accessed and updated only by the database system and not by the regular users of the database, and that is why this is referred to as a data dictionary as a special type and updated only by the database system. And also it contains metadata, which is data about the data. Whenever any operation is carried out on the database system always consults this table, the data dictionary, before reading or updating the data in the database. Now we are done with DDL commands.